Hare Krishna. Welcome to all, not all, only two of us. But anyway, due to some unavoidable reason, Mataji is not here with us this Sunday. And hopefully she will join us next Sunday or maybe next. So till now, you have to bear with me. And I hope that all you are watching online be very specific to the point we are reading here. And I would like to ask everyone, those who are supposed to come on time, but I see today nobody is coming here. So as usual, we start with Prabhupada mantra, and this Krishna book, as we read daily every Sunday, it's for Prabhupada pleasure, not for our pleasure. So when we are reading, we should be mindful that we are reading for Prabhupada. So as we start proceeding with Prabhupada mantra, and then we chant for each other. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Navine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desitarini. And to each other. Vancha Kalpatrupash Kripa Sindhu Vahevicha Patitanam Pavanebho Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. So we are starting this chapter 47, delivery of the message of Krishna to the Gopis. Welcome. Uddhava was standing near and he heard Radharani talking in this way, as if she had become almost mad for Krishna. He was exceedingly surprised at how the Gopis were accustomed to thinking had brought a message in Krishna constantly in that topmost ecstasy of Mahabhav love. He had brought a message in writing from Krishna, and now he wanted to present it before the Gopis. Just to pacify them, he said, "My dear Gopis, your mission of human life is now successful. You are all wonderful devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, you are eligible to be worshipped by all kinds of people. You are worshipable throughout the three worlds because your mind are wonderfully absorbed in the thought of Vasudev, Krishna. He is the goal of all pious activities and ritualistic performances such as giving charity, rigidly following the austerity of vows, undergoing severe penances, and igniting the fire of sacrifice. He is the purpose behind chanting different mantras, reading the Vedas, controlling the senses, and concentrating the mind in meditation. These are some of the many different processes of self-realization and attainment of perfection of life. But actually, they are meant only for realizing Krishna and dovetailing oneself in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the last instruction of the Bhagavad-Gita also. Although there are descriptions of different processes of self-realization, at the end Krishna recommends that one give up everything and simply surrender unto Him. All other processes are meant for teaching one how to surrender ultimately unto the lotus feet of Krishna. The Bhagavad-Gita also says that this surrendering process is completed by a sincere person after executing the processes of self-realization in wisdom and austerity for many births.
Since the perfection of such austerity was completely manifested in the lives of the Gopis, Uddhava was fully satisfied upon seeing their transcendental position. He continued, "My dear Gopis, the mentality you have developed in relationship with Krishna is very, very difficult to attain, even for great sages and saintly persons. You have attained the highest perfectional stage of life. It is a great boon for you that you have fixed your minds upon Krishna and have decided to have Krishna only, giving up your families, homes, relatives, husbands and children for the sake of the Supreme Personality. Because your minds are now fully absorbed in Krishna, the Supreme Soul, universal love has automatically developed in you. I think myself very fortunate that I've been favored by your grace to see you in this situation. When Uddhava said that he had a message from Krishna, the gopis were more interested in hearing the message than in hearing about their exalted position. They did not very much like being praised for their high position. They showed their anxiety to hear the message Uddhava had brought from Krishna. Uddhava said, "My dear gopis, I am especially deputed to carry this message to you, who are such great and gentle devotees. Krishna has specifically sent me to you because I am his most confidential servitor."
Uddhava did not deliver to the gopis the written message brought from Krishna, but he personally read it to them. The message was very gravely written, so that not only the gopis but all empiric philosophers might understand how pure love of God is intrinsically integrated with all the different energies of the Supreme Lord. From Vedic information, it is understood that the Supreme Lord has multiple energies. Also, the gopis were such intimate personal friends of Krishna that while he was writing the message for them, he was so moved that he could not write it distinctly. Uddhava, as a student of Brihaspati, had very sharp intelligence, so instead of handing over the written message, he thought it wise to read it personally and explain it to them. Uddhava continued, "These are the words of the personality of Godhead. My dear gopis, my dear friends, please know that separation between ourselves is impossible at any time, at any place, or under any circumstance, because I am all-pervading."
Thank you. This all-pervasiveness of Krishna is explained in the Bhagavad-Gita in both the 9th and 7th chapters. In the 9th chapter, Krishna is described as all-pervasive in his impersonal feature. Everything rests in him, but he is not personally present everywhere. And in the 7th chapter, it is stated that the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air and sky, and the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence and ego, are all his inferior energies. But there is another superior energy which is called the living entity. The living entities are also directly part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is both the material and the efficient cause of everything. He is always intermingled with everything as cause and effect. Not only the gopis, but all living entities are always inseparably connected with Krishna in all circumstances. The gopis, however, are perfectly and thoroughly in cognition of this relationship with Krishna, whereas the living entities, under the spell of Maya, the illusory energy, are forgetful of Krishna and think themselves separate identities having no connection with him.
Love of Krishna or Krishna consciousness is therefore the perfection of real knowledge in understanding things as they are. Our minds can never be vacant. The mind is constantly occupied with some kind of thoughts, and the subject matter of such thought cannot be outside the 8 elements of Krishna's energy. One who knows this philosophical aspect of all thoughts is actually a wise man, and he surrenders on to Krishna. The gopis are the epitome of this perfectional stage of knowledge. They are not simple mental speculators. Their minds are always in Krishna. The mind is nothing but the energy of Krishna. Actually, any person who can think, feel, and will cannot be separated from Krishna. But the stage in which he can understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is called Krishna consciousness. The disease condition in which he cannot understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is the contaminated stage or Maya. Since the gopis are on the platform of pure transcendental knowledge, their minds are always filled with Krishna consciousness. For example, as there is no separation between fire and air, there is no separation between Krishna and the living entities. When the living entities forget Krishna, they are not in their normal condition. As for the Gopis, because they are always thinking of Krishna, they are on the absolute stage of perfection and knowledge. The so-called empirical philosophers sometimes think that the path of bhakti is meant for the less intelligent. But unless the so-called man of knowledge comes to the platform of bhakti, his knowledge is certainly impure and imperfect. Actually, the stage of forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with Krishna is separation. But that is also illusionary because there is no such separation. The Gopis were not situated in that illusionary condition of life. So even from the philosophical point of view, for them there was no separation.
Uddhava continued, reading Krishna's message. Nothing is separate from me. The whole cosmic manifestation is resting on me and is not separate from me. Before the creation, I was existing. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. Eko Narayana Asin na Brahma Neshana. Before creation, there was only Narayana. There was no Brahma and no Shiva. The whole cosmic manifestation is manipulated by the three modes of material nature. It is said that Brahma, the incarnation of the quality of passion, created this universe. But Brahma is the secondary creator. The original creator is Narayana. This is confirmed by Shankaracharya. Narayana paro avyaktat. Narayana is transcendental, beyond this cosmic creation. In this way, nothing within this cosmic manifestation is separate from Krishna, although Krishna's original form is not visible in everything.
Krishna creates, maintains, and annihilates the whole cosmic manifestation by expanding himself in different incarnations. Everything is Krishna and everything depends on Krishna. But he is not perceived in the material energy and therefore it is called Maya or illusion. In the spiritual energy, however, Krishna is perceived at every step in all circumstances. This perfectional stage of understanding is represented by the Gopis, as Krishna is always aloof from the cosmic manifestation, although it is completely dependent on him. So a living entity is also completely aloof from his material condition life, although the material body has developed on the basis of spiritual existence. In the Bhagavad-Gita, the whole cosmic manifestation is accepted as the mother of the living entities, and Krishna is the father. As the father impregnates the mother by injecting the living entity within the womb, Krishna injects all the living entities into the womb of this material nature. They come out in different bodies according to their different fruitive activities, but in all circumstances, the living entity is aloof from the material conditioned life.
If we simply study our own bodies, we can understand how a living entity is always aloof from this bodily engagement. Every action of the body takes place by the interaction of the three modes of material nature. We can see at every moment many changes taking place in our bodies, but the spirit soul is aloof from all changes. One can neither create nor annihilate nor interface with the actions of material nature. The living entity is therefore entrapped by the material body and conditioned in three stages, namely while awake, asleep, and unconsciousness. The mind acts throughout all three conditions of life. The living entity in his sleeping or dreaming condition sees something as real, and when awake he sees the same thing as unreal. It is concluded, therefore, that under certain circumstances he accepts something as real, and under other circumstances he accepts the very same thing as unreal. These matters are the subject of study for the empiric philosopher or the Sankhya Yogi. To come to the right conclusion, Sankhya Yogis undergo severe austerities and penances, practicing control of the senses and renunciation.
All these different ways of determining the ultimate goal of life are compared to rivers, and Krishna is compared to the ocean. As the rivers flow down toward the ocean, all attempts for knowledge flow toward Krishna. After many, many births of endeavour, when one actually comes to Krishna, he attains the perfectional stage. Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita, Klesho dikataras tesham avyaktasakta chetasam. All are pursuing the path of realizing me, but those who have adopted courses without any bhakti find their endeavour very troublesome. Krishna cannot be understood unless one comes to the point of bhakti. 3 paths are enunciated in the Bhagavad-Gita: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti-yoga. Those who are too much addicted to fruitive activities are advised to perform actions which will bring them to bhakti. Those who are addicted to the pursuit of empirical philosophy are also advised to act in such a way that they will realize bhakti. Karma Yoga is therefore different from ordinary karma, and Jnana Yoga is different from ordinary jnana. Ultimately, as stated by the Lord in the Bhagavad-Gita, Bhaktyamam abhijanati, only through execution of devotional service can one understand Krishna. The perfectional stage of devotional service was achieved by the Gopis because they did not care to know anything but Krishna. It is confirmed in the Vedas, Kasmin ubhagavo vinyate sarvam idam vignatam bhavatiti. This means that simply by knowing Krishna, one automatically acquires all other knowledge.
Uddhava continued reading Krishna's message. Transcendental knowledge of the Absolute is no longer necessary for you. You were accustomed to loving me from the very beginning of your lives. Knowledge of the Absolute Truth is specifically required for persons who want liberation from material existence. But one who has attained love for Krishna is already on the platform of liberation. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, anyone engaged in unalloyed devotional service is to be considered situated on the transcendental platform of liberation. The Gopis did not actually feel any pangs of material existence, but they felt the separation of Krishna. Krishna therefore said, "My dear Gopis, to increase your super excellent love for me, I have purposely separated myself from you, so that you may be in constant meditation on me." The Gopis are in the perfectional stage of meditation. Yogis are generally more fond of meditating than of executing devotional service to the Lord, but they do not know that the perfection of the yoga system is the attainment of devotion. This constant meditation on Krishna by the Gopis is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita to be the topmost yoga. Krishna knew very well the psychology of women. When a woman's beloved is away, she thinks of him more in meditation than when he is present before her. Krishna wanted to teach through the behavior of the Gopis that one who is constantly in trance, like the Gopis, surely attains his lotus feet.
Lord Chaitanya taught people in general the method of Vipralamba Seva, which is the method of rendering service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the feeling of separation. The 6 Goswamis also taught worship of Krishna in the feeling of the gopis in separation. The prayers composed by Srinivasacharya about the gopis explain these matters very clearly. Srinivasacharya said that the Goswamis were always absorbed in the ocean of transcendental feelings in the mood of the gopis. When they lived in Vrindavan, they were searching for Krishna, crying, "Where are you, Krishna? O gopis, where are you? Where are you, Srimati Radharani?" They never said, "We have now seen Radha and Krishna and therefore our mission is fulfilled." Their mission remained always unfulfilled. They never met Radha and Krishna. Krishna reminded the gopis that at the time of the Rasa dance, those gopis who could not join him for the Rasa Leela gave up their bodies simply by thinking of him. Absorption in Krishna consciousness by feeling separation is thus the quickest method for attainment of the lotus feet of Krishna. By the personal statement of Krishna, the gopis were convinced about the strength of feelings of separation. They were actually experiencing the supernatural method of Krishna worship and were much relieved by understanding that Krishna was not away from them but always with them.
The gopis therefore received Uddhava very happily and began to speak as follows. We have heard that King Kansa, who was always a source of trouble for the Yadu dynasty, has now been killed. This is good news for us. We hope, therefore, that the members of the Yadu dynasty are very happy in the association of Krishna, who can fulfill all the desires of his devotees. My dear Uddhava, kindly let us know whether Krishna sometimes thinks of us while in the midst of the highly enlightened society girls in Mathura. We know that the women and girls in Mathura are not village women. They are enlightened and beautiful. Their bashful smiling glances and other feminine features must be very pleasing to Krishna. We know very well that Krishna is always fond of the behavior of beautiful women. It seems, therefore, that he has been entrapped by the women of Mathura. My dear Uddhava, will you kindly let us know if Krishna sometimes remembers us while in the midst of other women?
Another gopi inquired, "Does he remember that night in the midst of kumud flowers and moonlight, when Vrindavan became exceedingly beautiful? Krishna was dancing with us and the atmosphere was surcharged with the sound of footbells. We exchanged pleasing conversation then. Does he remember that particular night? We remember that night and we feel separation. Separation from Krishna makes us agitated, as if there were fire in our bodies. Does he propose to come back to Vrindavan to extinguish that fire? Just as a cloud appears in the sky to extinguish a forest fire by its downpour." Another gopi said, "Krishna has killed his enemy and he has victoriously achieved the kingdom of Kamsa. Maybe he is married with a king's daughter by this time and living happily among his kinsmen and friends. Therefore, why should he come to this village of Vrindavan?"
Another gopi said, "Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the husband of the goddess of fortune, and he is self-sufficient. He has no business either with us, the girls in the Vrindavan forest, or with the city girls in Mathura. He is the great super soul, and he has nothing to do with any of us, either here or there." Another gopi said, "It is an unreasonable hope for us to expect Krishna to come back to Vrindavan. We should try instead to be happy in disappointment." Even Pingal, the great prostitute, said that disappointment is the greatest pleasure. We all know these things, but it is very difficult for us to give up the expectation of Krishna's coming back. We can forget a solitary conversation with Krishna, on whose chest the goddess of fortune always remains, in spite of Krishna's not desiring her. My dear Uddhava, is that right? Vrindavan is the land of rivers, forests and cows. Here the vibration of the flute was heard, and Krishna, along with his elder brother, Sri Balaram, enjoyed the atmosphere in our company. Thus the environment of Vrindavan constantly reminds us of Krishna and Balaram. On the land of Vrindavan are the impressions of his footprints, the residence of the goddess of fortune, and because of such signs we cannot forget Krishna.
Little louder. The Gopis further expressed that Vrindavan was still full of all opulence and good fortune. There was no scarcity or want in Vrindavan as far as material necessities were concerned, but in spite of such opulence, they could not forget Krishna and Balaram. We constantly remember various attractive features of beautiful Krishna. His walking, his smiling, his joking words, he have all become lost by dealing of Krishna, and it is impossible for us to forget him. We always pray to him, exclaiming, "Dear Lord, dear husband of the goddess of fortune, dear Lord of Vrindavan and deliverer of distressed devotees, we have now fallen and merged into an ocean of distress. Please, therefore, come back to Vrindavan and deliver us from the pitiable condition." Uddhava minutely studied the transcendental abnormal condition of the Gopis in their separation from Krishna, and he thought it wise to repeat again and again all the pastimes they had enjoyed with him. Materialistic persons are always burning into a blazing fire of material miseries. The Gopis were burning in a transcendental blazing fire due to separation from Krishna. The blazing fire exasperating the Gopis, however, is different from the fire of the material world. The Gopis constantly wanted the association of Krishna, whereas materialistic persons constantly want the advantage of material comforts.
It is stated that by Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakur that Krishna saved the cowherd boys from the blazing forest fire within a second, while their eyes were closed. Similarly, Uddhava advised the Gopis that they could be saved from the fire of separation by closing their eyes and meditating on the activities of Krishna from the very beginning of their association with him. From the outside, the Gopis could visualize all the pastimes of Krishna by hearing the descriptions of Uddhava, and from within they could remember those pastimes. From the instructions of Uddhava, the Gopis could understand that Krishna was not separate from them. As they were constantly thinking of Krishna, Krishna was also thinking of them constantly at Mathura. Uddhava's message and instruction saved the Gopis from immediate death, and the Gopis acknowledged the benediction from Uddhava. Uddhava practically acted as the preceptor, spiritual master of the Gopis, and in return they worshipped him as they would worship Krishna. It is recommended in authoritative scriptures that the spiritual master be worshipped on the level of the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of being his very confidential servitor. And it is accepted by great authorities that the spiritual master is the external manifestation of Krishna. The Gopis were relieved from their transcendental burning condition by realizing that Krishna was with them. Internally, they remembered his association within their hearts, and externally Uddhava helped them associate with Krishna by his conclusive instructions.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead is described in the scriptures as Adokshaja, which indicates that he is beyond the perception of all material senses. Although beyond the material senses, he is present in everyone's heart. At the same time, he is present everywhere by his all-pervasive feature of Brahman. One can realize all three transcendental features of the Absolute Truth: Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead; Paramatma, the localized Supersoul; and the all-pervasive Brahman, simply by studying the condition of the Gopis in their meeting with Uddhava, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said by Srinivasacharya that the 6 Goswamis were always merged in thoughts of the activities of the Gopis. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has also recommended the Gopis' method of worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead as super excellent. Srila Shukadev Goswami has also recommended that anyone who hears from the right source about the dealings of the Gopis with Krishna and who follows the instructions laid down by the previous acharyas will be elevated to the topmost position of devotional service and be able to give up the lust of material enjoyment.
All the gopis were solaced by the instructions of Uddhava, and they requested him to stay in Vrindavana for a few days more. Uddhava agreed to their proposal and stayed with them not only for a few days but for a few months. He always kept them engaged in thinking of the transcendental message of Krishna and his pastimes, and the gopis felt as if they were experiencing direct association with Krishna. While Uddhava remained in Vrindavana, the inhabitants enjoyed his association. As they discussed the activities of Krishna, the days passed just like moments. Vrindavana's natural atmosphere, with the presence of the river Yamuna, its nice orchards of trees decorated with various fruits, Govardhan Hill, caves, blooming flowers, all combined to inspire Uddhava to narrate Krishna's pastimes. The inhabitants enjoyed Uddhava's association in the same way that they enjoyed the association of Krishna. Uddhava was attracted by the attitude of the gopis because they were completely attached to Krishna, and he was inspired by the gopis' anxiety for Krishna. He offered them his respectful obeisances and composed songs in praise of their transcendental qualities as follows. Among all the living entities who have accepted the human form of life, the gopis are super excellently successful in their mission. Their thought is eternally absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna. Great sages and we ourselves also try to be absorbed in meditation on the lotus feet of Krishna. But the gopis, having lovingly accepted the Lord, are automatically accustomed to this and do not depend on any yogic practice. The conclusion is that one who has attained the gopis' condition of life does not have to take birth as Lord Brahma, or be born in a Brahmana family, or be initiated as a Brahmana.
Sri Uddhava confirmed Lord Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad-Gita that one who takes shelter of him for the right purpose, be that person a Shudra, a woman, or a member of a low-grade family, will attain the highest goal of life. The gopis have set the standard of devotion for the whole world. One who follows in the footsteps of the gopis by constantly thinking of Krishna can attain the highest perfection of spiritual life. The gopis were born not of any highly cultured family but of cowherd men. Yet they developed the highest love of Krishna, who is the Supersoul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the Supreme Brahman. For self-realization or God-realization, there is no need to take birth in a high family. The only thing needed is development of ecstatic love of God. For achieving perfection in Krishna consciousness, no qualification is required other than to be constantly engaged in the loving service of Krishna, the supreme nectar, the reservoir of all pleasure. The effect of taking up Krishna consciousness is just like that of drinking nectar. With or without one's knowledge, it will act. The active principle of Krishna consciousness will equally manifest itself everywhere. It does not matter how and where one has taken his birth. Krishna will bestow his benediction upon anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness without any doubt. Uddhava continued, the supreme benediction
Uddhava continued, the supreme benediction attained by the Gopis in spite of their being born in the families of cowherd man was never attained even by the goddess of fortune herself, and certainly not by the denizens of heaven. Though the bodily scent of the woman there is exactly the scent of the lotus. The Gopis are so fortunate that during the Rasa Leela, Krishna personally embraced them with his arms and kissed them face to face. Certainly, it is not possible for any woman in the three worlds to achieve this except the Gopis.
Therefore, I wish to take birth as one of the plants or creepers in Vrindavan, who are so fortunate that the Gopis trample them. The Gopis have so lovingly served Krishna, Mukunda himself, the giver of liberation, who is searched after by great sages and saintly persons. For his sake, they left everything, their families, their children, their friends, their homes, and all worldly connections. Uddhava appreciated the exalted position of the Gopis and wished to fall down and take the dust of their feet on his head. Yet he dared not ask the Gopis to offer the dust from their feet. Perhaps they would not be agreeable. Therefore, to have his head smeared with the dust of the Gopis' feet without their knowledge, he desired to become only an insignificant clump of grass or herbs in the land of Vrindavan.
Okay, that was a little bit missing. Yeah. The Gopis were so attracted to Krishna that when they heard the vibration of his flute, they instantly left their homes, families, children, honor, and feminine bashfulness, and ran toward the place where Krishna was standing. They did not consider whether they were passing over the road or through the jungles. Imperceptibly, the dust of their feet was bestowed on small grasses and herbs of Vrindavan. Not daring to place the dust of the Gopis' feet on his own head in this life, Uddhava aspired to have a future birth in Vrindavan in the position of a clump of grass or herbs. He would then be able to have the dust of the Gopis' feet. Uddhava appreciated the extraordinary fortune of the Gopis, who were relieved of all material pangs and anxieties by placing on their beautiful high breasts the lotus feet of Krishna, which are worshipped not only by the goddess of fortune, but by such exalted demigods as Brahma and Lord Shiva, and which great yogis meditate upon within their hearts. Thus, Uddhava prayed to be constantly honored by the dust from the lotus feet of the Gopis, whose chanting of Lord Krishna's transcendental pastimes has become celebrated all over the three worlds.
After living in Vrindavan for some time, Uddhava desired to go back to Krishna and he begged permission to leave from Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda. He had to farewell meeting with the Gopis and taking permission from them also. He mounted his chariot to start from Mathura. When Uddhava was about to leave, all the inhabitants of the Vrindavan, headed by Maharaj Nanda and Yashoda, came to bid him goodbye and presented him with the various kinds of valuable goods secured in Vrindavan. They expressed their feelings with tears in their eyes due to intense attachment for Krishna. All of them desired a benediction from Uddhava. They desired to always remember the glorious activities of Krishna and wanted their minds to be always fixed upon his lotus feet, their words to be always engaged in glorifying him, and their bodies to be always engaged in bowing down as they constantly remembered him. This prayer of the inhabitants of Vrindavan is the super excellent type of self-realization. The method is very simple: to fix the mind always on the lotus feet of Krishna, to talk always of Krishna without passing on any other subject matter, and to engage the body in Krishna service constantly. Especially in this human form of life, one should engage his life, resources, words, and intelligence for the service of the Lord. Only such activities can elevate a human being to the highest level of perfection. This is the verdict of all authorities.
The, the inhabitant of Vrindavan said, by the will of the Supreme Authority and according to the results of our own work, we may take our birth anywhere. It doesn't matter where we are born, but our only prayer is that we may simply be engaged in Krishna consciousness. A pure devotee of Lord Krishna never desired to be promoted to the heavenly planets or even to Vaikuntha or Golok Vrindavan, because he has no desire for his own personal satisfaction. A pure devotee regards heaven and hell to be on an equal level. Without Krishna, heaven is hell, and with Krishna, hell is heaven. When Uddhava had been fully honored and worshipped by the pure devotees of Vrindavan, he returned to Mathura and to his master Krishna. After offering respect by bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balram, he described the wonderful devotional life of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Then he presented to Vasudev, Krishna's father, and Ugrasen, Krishna's grandfather, all the gifts given by the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 47th chapter of Krishna, delivery of the message of Krishna to the Gopis.
Haribol. Say loudly, Haribol.
Chapter 48. Krishna pleases his devotees. For days together, Krishna heard from Uddhava all the details of his visit to Vrindavan, especially the condition of his father and mother, and of the gopis and the cowherd boys. Lord Krishna was fully satisfied that Uddhava was able to solace them by his instructions and by the message delivered to them. Lord Krishna then decided to go to the house of Kubja, the hunchback woman who had pleased him by offering him sandalwood pulp when he was entering the city of Mathura. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna always tries to please his devotees as much as the devotees try to please Krishna. As the devotees always think of Krishna within their hearts, Krishna also thinks of his devotees within himself. When Kubja was converted into a beautiful society girl, she wanted Krishna to come to her place so that she could try to receive and worship him in her own way. Society girls generally try to satisfy their clients by offering their bodies for the men to enjoy. But this society girl, Kubja, was actually captivated by a lust to satisfy her senses with Krishna. When Krishna desired to go to the house of Kubja, he certainly had no desire for sense gratification. By supplying the sandalwood pulp to Krishna, Kubja had already satisfied his senses. On the plea of her sense gratification, however, he decided to go to her house, not actually for sense gratification, but to turn her into a pure devotee. Krishna is always served by many thousands of goddesses of fortune. Therefore, he has no need to satisfy his senses by going to a society girl. But because he is kind to everyone, he decided to go there. It is said that the moon does not withhold its shining from the courtyard of a crooked person. Similarly, Krishna's transcendental mercy is never denied to anyone who has rendered service unto him, whether through lust, anger, fear, or pure love. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is stated that if one wants to serve Krishna and at the same time wants to satisfy his own lusty desires, Krishna will handle the situation so that the devotee forgets his lusty desires and becomes fully purified and constantly engaged in the service of the Lord.
To fulfill his promise, Krishna, along with Uddhava, went to the house of Kubja, who is very eager to get Krishna for the satisfaction of her lusty desires. When Krishna reached her house, he saw that it was completely decorated in a way to excite the lusty desires of a man. This suggests that there were many nude pictures, on top of which were canopies and flags embroidered with pearl necklaces, along with comfortable beds and cushioned chairs. The rooms were provided with flower garlands and were nicely scented with incense and sprinkled with scented water, and the rooms were illuminated by nice lamps. When Kubja saw that Lord Krishna had come to her house to fulfill his promised visit, she immediately got up from her chair and received him cordially. Accompanied by her many girlfriends, she began to talk with him with great respect and honor. After offering him a nice place to sit, she worshipped Krishna in a manner just suitable to her position. Uddhava was similarly received by Kubja and her girlfriends, but he did not want to sit on an equal level with Krishna, and thus he simply sat down on the floor.
As one usually does in such situations, Krishna entered the bedroom of Kubja without wasting time. In the meantime, Kubja took her bath and smeared her body with sandalwood pulp. She dressed herself with nice garments, valuable jewelry, ornaments, and flower garlands. After chewing betel nut and other intoxicating eatables and spraying herself with scents, she appeared before Krishna. Her smiling glance and moving eyebrows were full of feminine bashfulness as she stood gracefully before Lord Krishna, who is known as Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune. When Krishna saw Kubja hesitating to come before him, he immediately caught hold of her hand, which was decorated with bangles. With great affection, he dragged her near him and made her sit by his side. Simply by having previously supplied pulp of sandalwood to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, Kubja became free from all sinful reactions and eligible to enjoy with him. She then took Krishna's lotus feet and placed them on her breasts, which were burning with the blazing fire of lust. By smelling the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet, she was immediately relieved of all lusty desires. She was thus allowed to embrace Krishna with her arms and mitigate her long cherished desire to have him as a visitor in her house.
It is stated in the Bhagavad-Gita that one must be freed of all material sinful reactions before one can engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Simply by supplying sandalwood pulp to Krishna, Kubja was thus rewarded. She was not trained to worship Krishna in any other way. Therefore, she wanted to satisfy him by her profession. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita that the Lord can be worshipped even by one's profession, if it is sincerely offered for the pleasure of the Lord. Kubja told Krishna, "My dear friend, kindly remain with me at least for a few days and enjoy with me." My dear lotus-eyed friend, I cannot leave you immediately. Please grant my request.
As stated in the Vedic versions, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has multipotencies. According to expert opinion, Kubja represents the Bhu-Shakti, potency of Krishna, just as Srimati Radharani represents his Chit-Shakti potency. Although Kubja requested Krishna to remain with her for some days, Krishna politely impressed upon her that it was not possible for him to stay. Krishna visits this material world occasionally, whereas his connection with the spiritual world is eternal. Krishna is always present either in the Vaikuntha planets or in the Golok Vrindavan planet. The technical term of his presence in the spiritual world is Aprakata Leela.
After satisfying Kubja with sweet words, Krishna returned home with Uddhava. There is a warning in Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna is not very easily worshipped, for he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the chief among the Vishnu Tattvas. To worship Krishna or have association with him is not very easy. Specifically, there is a warning for devotees attracted to Krishna through conjugal love. It is not good for them to desire sense gratification by direct association with Krishna. Actually, the activities of sense gratification are material. In the spiritual world, there are symptoms like kissing and embracing, but there is no sense gratificatory process as it exists in the material world. This warning is specifically for those known as sabjiyas, who take it for granted that Krishna is an ordinary human being. They desire to enjoy sex life with him in a perverted way. In a spiritual relationship, sense gratification is most insignificant. Anyone who desires a relationship of perverted sense gratification with Krishna must be considered less intelligent. His mentality requires to be reformed. After a while, Krishna fulfilled his promise to visit Akrura and at his house. Akrura was in relationship with Krishna as his servitor, and Krishna wanted to get some service.
After a while, Krishna fulfilled his promise to visit Akrura at his house. Akrura was in relationship with Krishna as his servitor, and Krishna wanted to get some service from him. When Krishna and Balram and Uddhava approached the house of Akrura, Akrura came forward, embraced Uddhava, and offered respectful obeisances. Bowing down before Lord Krishna and Balram, Krishna, Balram, and offered appropriate sitting places. When all were comfortably seated, Akrura washed their feet and sprinkled the water on his head. Then he offered nice clothing, flowers, and sandalwood pearl in regular worship. All three of them were very satisfied by Akrura's behavior. Akrura then bowed down before Krishna, putting his head gently began to massage them. When Akrura was fully satisfied in the presence of Krishna and Balram, his eyes filled the tears of love of Krishna, and he began to offer his prayer as follows. My dear Lord Krishna and Balram, it is very kind of you to have killed Kansa and his associates. You have delivered the whole family of the Yadu dynasty from the greatest calamity. The Yadus will always remember you saving of their Kate dynasty. My dear Lord Krishna and Balram, both of you are the original personality from whom everything has emanated. The original cause of all causes. You have inconceivable energy and you are all pervasive. There is no cause and effect, gross and subtle, but you. You are the Supreme Personality, Supreme Brahma, realized through the study of the Vedas. By your inconceivable energy, you are actually visible before us. You create the cosmic manifestation by your own potencies and you enter into it yourself. As the five material elements earth, water, fire, air, and sky are distributed in everything manifested by different kinds of bodies, so you alone enter the various bodies created by your own energy. You enter the body as the individual soul and independently as the super soul. It is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita that the material body is created by Krishna's inferior energy, that the living entities. The individual souls are his part and parcels, and the super soul is his localized representation. Thus, while the material body, the living entity, and the super soul constitute an individual living being, originally they are all different energies of the one Supreme Lord.
Akrura continued, in the material world, you create, maintain, and dissolve the whole manifestation by the interactions of the three material qualities, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. But you are not implicated in the activities of those material qualities. For your support, for your supreme knowledge is never overcome like the knowledge of the individual living entity. The Supreme Lord enters the material cosmos and causes creation, maintenance, and destruction in their due course. Whereas the part and parcel living entity enters the material element and has his material body created for him. The difference between the living entity and the Lord is that the living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and has the tendency to be overcome by the interactions of the material qualities. Krishna, the Parbrahm or the Supreme Brahman, being always situated in full knowledge, is never overcome by such activities. Therefore, Krishna is called Achyuta, meaning he who never falls down. Krishna knowledge of his spiritual identity is never overcome by material action, whereas the minute part and parcel living entities are prone to forget their spiritual identity due to material action. The individual living entity are eternally part and parcel of God. Minute sparks of the original fire, Krishna, as sparks are prone to be extinguished but not the blazing fire. So the living entity can be overcome by material activities, whereas Krishna never can.
Akrura continued, less intelligent men misunderstand your transcendental form to be made of material energy. But that concept is not at all applicable to you. Actually, you are all spiritual, and there is no difference between you and your body. Therefore, there is no question of your being conditioned or liberated. You are ever liberated in any condition of life. As stated in the Bhagavad-Gita, only fools and rascals consider you an ordinary man. To consider your lordship one of us, conditioned by the material nature, is a mistake due to our imperfect knowledge. When people deviate from the original knowledge of the Vedas, they try to identify the ordinary living entities with your lordship, who have appeared on this earth in your original form to re-establish the real knowledge that the living entities are neither one with nor equal to the Supreme God. My dear Lord, you are always situated in uncontaminated goodness, Shuddha Sattva. Your appearance is necessary to re-establish actual Vedic knowledge, as opposed to the atheistic philosophy, which tries to establish that God and the living entities are one and the same. My dear Lord Krishna, this time you have appeared in the home of Vasudevas' son, with your plenary expansion, Sri Balaram. Your mission is to kill all the atheistic royal families and destroy their huge military strength. You have advented yourself to minimize the burden of the world. And to fulfill this mission, you have glorified the dynasty of Yadu by appearing as one of its members.
My dear Lord, today my home has been purified by your presence. I have become the most fortunate person in the world, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is worshipable by all different kinds of demigods, pitas, kings, emperors, and other living entities, and who is the super soul of everything, has come into my home. The water of his lotus feet purifies the three worlds, and now he has kindly come to my place. Who in the three worlds among factually learned men will not take shelter of your lotus feet and surrender unto you? Who, knowing well that no one can be as affectionate as you are to your devotees, is so foolish that he will decline to become your devotee? Throughout the Vedic literature, it is declared that you are the dearmost friend of every living entity. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita. Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, completely capable of fulfilling the desires of your devotees. You are the real friend of everyone. In spite of giving yourself to your devotees, you are never depleted of your original potency. Your potency neither decreases nor increases in volume.
My dear Lord, it is very difficult for even great mystic yogis and demigods to ascertain your movements or approach you. Yet, out of your causeless mercy, you have kindly consented to come to my home. This is the most auspicious moment in the journey of my material existence. By your grace only, I can now understand that my home, my wife, my children, and my worldly possessions are all bonds to material existence. Please cut the knot and save me from. Please cut the knot and save me from this entanglement of false society, friendship, and love. Lord Shri Krishna was very much pleased by Akrura's offering of prayers. With his smile captivating Akrura's more and more, the Lord replied to his submissive devotional statements with the following sweet words. My dear Akrura, in spite of your submissiveness, I consider you my superior, on the level with my father and teacher, and most well-wishing friend. You are therefore to be worshipped by me, and since you are my uncle, I am always to be protected by you. I desire you to maintain me, for I am one of your own children. Apart from this filial relationship, an exalted devotee like you is always to be worshipped by everyone. Anyone who desires good fortune must offer his respectful obeisances onto personalities like you, who are greater than demigods. People worship the demigods when in need of some sense gratification, and the gods offer benedictions to their devotees after being worshipped. But a devotee like you, Akrura, is always ready to offer people the greatest benediction. A saintly person or devotee is free to offer benedictions to everyone, whereas the demigods can offer benedictions only after being worshipped. One can take advantage of a place of pilgrimage only after going there, and worshipping a particular demigod involves waiting a long time for the fulfillment of one's desire. But saintly persons like you, my dear Akrura, can immediately fulfill all the desires of a devotee. My dear Akrura, you are always our friend and well-wisher. You are always ready to act for our welfare. Kindly, therefore, go to Hastinapur and see what arrangement has been made for the Pandavas.
Krishna was anxious to know about the sons of Pandu because at a very young age they had lost their father. Being very friendly to his devotees, Krishna was anxious to know about them, and therefore he deputed Akrura to go to Hastinapur and get information of the real situation. Krishna continued, I have heard that after King Pandu's death, his young sons, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakul, and Sahadev, along with their widowed mother, have come under the charge of Dhritarashtra, who is to look after them as their guardian. But I have also heard that Dhritarashtra is not only blind from birth, but also blind in his affection for his cruel son Duryodhana. The 5 Pandavas are the sons of King Pandu, but Dhritarashtra, due to Duryodhana's plans and designs, is not favorably disposed toward them. Kindly go there and study how Dhritarashtra is dealing with the Pandavas. On recipient of your report, I shall consider how to favor them. In this way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna ordered Akrura to go to Hastinapur, and then he returned home accompanied by Balaram and Uddhava. Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 48th chapter of Krishna. Krishna pleases his devotees. Hari Bol.
Thus we conclude our weekly Krishna book reading for the pleasure of Prabhupada, and we would like to thank Prabhupada for allowing us to read this Krishna book every week. And as we conclude every week, we would like to conclude with Prabhupada's mantra, and then we chant for each other. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desatarini. And for each other. Namo Vancha Kalpatrupascha Kripa Sindhu Vahe Vicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So Hare Krishna to all who joined us today. And I would like to thank Mataji. She must be watching from online. If she is watching us, Hare Krishna Mataji, please come back soon. Because she called me in the morning, messaged me in the morning, and she said hopefully she will join us next week, or maybe in case if things goes well, not go well, she will join us next week. So Hare Krishna, thank you.